Welcome to the Short Funk Podcast. I'm Tom Barbley. I've been reflecting on my grandparents' legacy. These are my maternal grandparents, and in particular, a form of politeness that they taught me, which was more excessive in many regards than the politeness that my parents taught me, and is something that I still fundamentally maintain to this day. I often wonder if this politeness is a weakness. I often wonder if this politeness ultimately stifles me. But I find myself periodically returning to it and thinking to myself, actually, I'm better having had this than not having had this. Part of this is a need to constantly apologize for behavior. A need to analyze almost to the point where the other party is always the superior party. And this I don't think came from my grandparents. I think it's a direct response to the way I was raised, primarily by my mother. But with my grandparents, there was a series of incidents where my ability to show this politeness reaffirmed to them that I was someone of some degree of merit. One of the more interesting stories associated with this was when I went to spend time with my great-aunt, who was my maternal grandmother's sister. And when my grandparents came to stay, my great-aunt prepared a cup of tea for me. And I asked for milk, and she put milk in the tea. But the milk had soured long ago. The milk was about 2 weeks out of date. So I had this cup of tea, and I had to look like I was being polite and attentive through the conversation, even though I couldn't drink this tea. And at some point, I must have been about 13 at the time, maybe 12, 13, maybe 14. I asked if I could be excused so I could go out and see the garden. And this was a strange protocol breach, because my role was supposed to be in the conversation or being an active participant. And at the time, I think my grandmother said, "Why would you want to go to the garden?" My grandfather understood that there was something distinctly wrong with the tea and said, why don't you just go out to the garden? My great-aunt lived in a retirement community. It was a self-contained retirement community. Basically, each of the retirees had small apartments. They each had small gardens, these kind of things. And I was able to escape, pour out the tea quietly, and sneak back into the conversation as if I had never left. And it's this kind of politeness, this kind of, you don't want to rock the boat, you don't want to offend people, you want to keep people at this degree of happiness that I return to associated with, if I've left Australia for such a long period of time, what am I maintaining on some fundamental level? The nature of where I live, the nature of every element of the social interaction and the incidents that I encounter, these things are all distinctly different than my experience growing up in Australia. But I return to this notion of politeness. I return to this notion of a means of extracting yourself from certain circumstances. And I think it's more applicable now than it has ever been in my life previously. Tom Barbley in San Jose, signing out.